Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the BeBall Jones podcast. I am your lovely, handsome host for this evening, morning, afternoon. Wherever you're watching this, just know I'm the host. I'm BeBall Jones, the BeBall Jones podcast. That's kind of how things operate over here. And today I have another guest for you guys. As you know, or hopefully you're about to find out, like, of course, I'm a basketball trainer, but I am a nerd for, like, the mental side of the game, too. Like, just getting people to change their brain, how they see things and how they think about stuff. I like that part. Like, I like psychology and a little bit of sociology and all that stuff too. But I'm not like a professional at it. Like, I'm decent enough to like give you guys the game, but I got like somebody who like actually does this. And they do it at a very high level. Like they're dope at it. Like, I'm okay, but they're dope. So let's introduce you guys to the dopeness that we have and Mr. Alex. He's like professional. Like, what's going on? Professional PhD Alex. What's up, man?
What's going on, man? Thanks for having me. You got a great podcast voice, dude. You're crushing it.
Man, I appreciate that. I don't think I've heard that often. Like, I've heard I had a great voice, but I think this is the first time I've heard I had a great podcast voice. So I appreciate that.
You might be built for this.
God designed me for podcasting. He had podcasting design at some point, but he was like, let me make sure Brian has this like detail down. So
Let's slot him in. We'll get him talking about basketball. We'll get him talking on a podcast. But what could be better?
I'm living a life right now, man. Like, I can't complain.
That's awesome.
So let's tell the people about you, though. Like, you're living a pretty good life as well. So let's tell them about you and what you got going on.
Yeah. So my name's Alex. I'm the sports psychologist for the Toronto Raptors. I've been here for about 3.5 years, since actually right before the NBA went into lockdown and the bubble season of COVID. So I joined on March 1st, 2020, and I think that was March 11th, 2020. So it was a pretty quick turnaround. In my role, responsible for mental health and mental performance of players, coaches, and staff, but also responsible for what we call off-court player development. So that's things like character development, leadership development, life skills training, things that sort of round out the whole person as a basketball player. And we think a lot about how to help our players be great on the court, but obviously be great off the court, and think about how they can maximize their full potential. So that's where I come into play, doing things like helping athletes train their mindset, think about how they might perform better under pressure, manage stress, improve confidence, all those things.
So I don't want to make this whole thing about a COVID situation, but what was your thought process when you got hired and then like 2 seconds later, it's like, oh, I'm not even like working. Like, so let's take me through Alex, the man. Like, how did you handle that? But then how did you handle like the job environment and dealing with the players and like the new staff and everything?
It was an interesting time for me personally, because I was also transitioning out of my old job and into a new job. So there was a little bit of time there where I was doing 2 jobs. And so I didn't have a ton of time to really think about it much personally. Obviously, it was challenging and it was disappointing, right? Because you're sort of getting geared up to go live in a new place, be with these people that you really like, try to onboard, start a new job, do a good job, and then everything comes to a halt. And obviously the team's in Canada, like you couldn't even cross the border at the time. So it was like, I don't know when I'm going to go, right? I don't know when I'm going to go. I don't know when I'll live up there. I don't know any of that stuff. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and at times that was stressful and at times it was fun. But I think the way I tried to handle it was to just try to kind of embrace it. I mean, as a therapist and psychologist at that time, a lot of people needed help and support, right? And so for me, with that training, a lot of my attention was poured into other people, right? How do we keep other people safe, well, transition to remote work, keep people engaged, all those things. And then the team was great for me in that regard, because it became pretty clear quickly how important mental health was going to be throughout the pandemic, right? People dealing with isolation, losing their opportunity to connect with people at work, losing like a core part of their identity and how they spent their time. And so we were really proactive in thinking about, how do we help people cope with this? How do we help people cope with the change? How do we help people think about what to do with their time most effectively? So I got put to work fairly quickly, even though it was remote work. And then obviously you're trying to think about how you help and manage the players who are going through a unique situation too, right? Their whole year is on pause. It's not clear if we're going to start or stop. It's not clear where we'll pick up from. Will we just go straight to the playoffs? At the time, obviously, the bubble wasn't even a thought in anyone's mind.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really a lot of ambiguity and uncertainty, which I think was really tough on all of us, right? Us as the Raptors, but all of us as people dealing with
Yeah.
that. So I'm not immune to any of that. I certainly experienced some of that myself. But like I said, try to do my part, right, and help as many people as I could through it.
Mm. So what was like, how did you handle that? Because that's just like, so first off, how are the players being receptive to the mindset half of it? Some players are like, it's like, whatever, it's kind of phony or fake. And I know some of them kind of open to it, but how's like the overall reception to you in general? And especially during that time of like, it's a new person coming in and this whole pandemic thing. Like, you know what I mean? How did they handle that whole situation and really dealing with you?
Early on in the pandemic, I mean, I was really thoughtful about not reaching out to players because I was brand new. They had someone in my role before me who was still available and around and consulting. And so I tried to be really thoughtful about how quickly I made contact, found creative ways to offer support, right? So we did like a mindfulness challenge. We did kind of daily well-being challenges that everyone could do. And so that was the start of kind of building a relationship with the players, getting to know some of them. And then over time, as the pandemic went on and we spent more and more time kind of dealing with that, and then everyone was getting ready to bubble, I got sort of more and more involved. But it wasn't really until after the bubble that I started to build solid relationships with the players and be around them more. I just said, honestly, I never met any of them in person before that. So it was it was a weird time to transition in for sure. So I would say kind of broadly, like I think there's openness to what I do. We've done a good job, I think, making my role accessible, right? Like I'm at everything that we do. I show up to practice, I come to film, I go to games. And so I'm seen as part of the team, just like everybody else is seen as part of the team. And I think that that's a really effective way to integrate something like mindset training into what you do. Versus putting it away in a corner somewhere and kind of like, oh, if you find it you can go, which is how some teams deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I would say, we're entering a new era, I think, of athletes, right? You're seeing a bunch of famous athletes talk about their mindset or mental health broadly. And I think NBA players are similar, right? And in a lot of ways, NBA players are kind of leading the charge, right? You've got Kevin Love, DeMar DeRozan, John Wall, like the list of NBA players who are coming out and talking about things. If you go back to the bubble years, Paul George was talking about it. So I think it's becoming more and more accepted as part of what it means to be an elite athlete. It means to take care of your mind the same way that you take care of your body. And of course, you have some people who don't want to use it or don't get it or don't want to talk, and that's fine. Everyone has their right to make their own choice. I'm not here to force anyone to spend time with me. But I think we also got a contingent of guys who get that this is an important part of becoming a high performer.
So how do you act? Like, let me see how I want to ask this. So it's not mandatory for them to come to you. So how do you earn your paycheck to an extent? Because you could just like basically be coasting by and nobody comes to you, and it's like, I'm here. But if nobody comes to you, then it's kind of like, you know what I mean? So like, what do you do in that instance? Like, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, I'm not asking the best way, but like, they could easily just be like, no, I'm good, and not come to you. And so like, how does that whole dynamic work out?
Well, I'm responsible for a lot more than just player well-being. So that's part of it, right? So I'm
Mm-hmm.
responsible for thinking about things like organizational culture. How do we create a high performance team? How do we get staff members to work better together? I deal with things that you might think of are like kind of HR kind of issues, right? Employee behavior, staff behavior, player behavior, coach behavior. But then I'm also involved in things like player development, right? So we talk about how to help players develop their skills on the court. Like, well, what is the mindset like going for that? So you kind of find ways where you plug in across the organization
Mm-hmm.
the central skill set of being a psychologist, right? Which is basically understanding and helping modify human behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can think of an organization as like just a big group of people, right? There's a lot of human behavior happening everywhere. And so there's a lot of opportunity to make a big difference and to make an impact on how the organization is operating. And so I think that's a big way to add value as a psychologist, even if people aren't meeting with you individually. But what I found is it's kind of like a slow, steady rise. Once you've built a good relationship with a couple of players and you've done some things that are helpful, then the rest of the team, staff, people start to see that. And players will talk to each other, obviously. And so if they're comfortable, they'll say something, and that stuff helps too. But the reality is, there's a lot of work to go around with everyone figuring out how we can all be healthy and high performing. So of course, the players are the main focus, but all of us are trying to figure out how we can be the best that we can be.
Mm. So what is that relationship like with the coaches? Like I know I'm pretty sure you've done a lot of interviews always about the players, but like just I don't know what made me think about it, but like what is that relationship like with the coaches? Because they deal with a lot of like they're pretty much the whole job is their brain. They had to deal with like a lot of they're basically HR too to an extent because they have to manage the personalities in the locker room and oh he's proud of me because he's not playing as much and he has off the court issues. Now he's not performing on the court, so he has to deal with that. But some of that kind of falls in your lap too. So like how do you manage that with the coaches? Like what is their process look like when it comes to you two?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on, right? So I think to me, the way I think about coaching, the main currency of coaching, like what makes coaches successful, is good decisions and good relationships. And both of those things are heavily impacted by your mind, right? And how your
Mhm.
mind's functioning, from sleep to emotional health to um, kind of even the words you use, right? Like all those
Mhm.
things are kind of a product of the way that your brain works. And so I've been super lucky to work with some very psychologically minded coaches, right? Coaches who understand that, look, this is a huge part of what it means for me to be successful. And in many ways, I try to advocate for coaches thinking of themselves like elite performers, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you're also performing under pressure. You also have to make the right decision at the right time, the same way we ask players to do that. And that requires the same thing it requires of players, right? Good sleep, good nutrition, good hydration, exercise, right? Meditation, these basic things that we're trying to encourage players to do to be in a solid place to perform. Coaches need to be doing that same thing. So a lot of times my relationship is around helping coaches manage some of those things and then manage the unique stressors that come with being a coach, right? There's a lot of pressure to win and win now. There's a lot of kind of hierarchy status issues that come into play with coaching. There's a
Mhm.
lot to manage there. And so just like the players, we try to help the coaches manage those as best we can too.
Mm. Okay. I was just wondering because I don't know what made me think about that. So I was just like,
Great question. Yeah.
thank you, man. I pride myself on that. So I appreciate that. But nah, so um, I like giving practical stuff here too. So um, you're at the highest level, but let's bring it down to like high school, middle school. What can a coach do within their practices or training or whatever to they say build mental toughness, but like what can we actually do that's practical to help the players out to like develop them mentally and not just the skills?
So I think the first thing coaches can do is think really constructively about how they talk to players during practice and during games, right? So a lot of what we think of as mindset really comes down to beliefs you have about specific things that you're dealing with. So, for example, when you're thinking about mental toughness, a lot of that comes down to beliefs you have around dealing with challenges or dealing with adversity. And so, if you want your players to be better when it comes to dealing with challenges or dealing with adversity, you need to talk to them productively about how to do that. You need to actually teach them how to do that, right? So that might be doing things like saying, "Hey, when we're under pressure, we rise to the challenge," right? Or this is an opportunity for us to get better. Versus, some of the stuff you hear in coaching, which is crazy, right? Like,
Yeah.
you guys are crap, you were never going to do it. Yeah, it's like that stuff is not helpful. What are you hoping someone is going to gain from that, right?
Yeah.
So the first step is to talk productively and constructively about mindset skills, right? About what it means to persist through difficulty, right? Or be gritty, right? And so then that gets to things like growth mindset, right? Like emphasizing the value of effort over natural talent, talking about how important it is to work hard, stay consistent, but really then connecting that to behavior, right? So when someone does
Mhm.
something on the court that's persistent or someone gives really good effort, reinforce that, reward that, right? Like comment on the things you want players to do, not just the things that they're doing wrong, which is also a coaching default that tends to be problematic. So I think those are some really kind of practical ways that you as a coach could think about building some of these mindset skills. And then, I mean, you've been in this position too, right? If you're coaching someone, you can kind of tell, right? You can tell like when the confidence is gone or when they're being hard on themselves. Those are great opportunities to just pause and say, hey, you know what? I noticed that you got really hard on yourself right there. You got really down on yourself. Like, tell me, what were you saying to yourself in that moment? And then if they give you the answer, you can ask like, well, did that help you? How did that work for you? Right? Like, be curious. Try to help your players become scientists about their own performance. If you can do those kinds of things and give that feedback, you can really build constructive mindset skills. The last thing I'll say is, broadly speaking, I think coaches really need to practice giving feedback about positive things, right? So the golden ratio is kind of 5 positives to every 1 negative if you want a negative bit of criticism or feedback to sink in. And so that's a lot of praise to be giving, right? But we're very, as a society broadly, certainly in coaching, we're very quick to give a lot of constructive criticism. So think about something that you've done at work. Like if you're a high school coach, right, you maybe teach classes and you've asked for feedback or you've gotten student reviews, right? It's super easy. Like, oh, you went too fast. You shouldn't have done this. You should have done that. Oh, that wasn't interesting. Because that's how we're conditioned. But it's much, much harder and much more valuable to say, hey, when you did this, and this, I loved it. Hey, when you ran really hard after that loose ball, that was excellent. I really liked the way that you stayed focused on that and you were willing to sacrifice for your teammates. That was amazing. And the next time that happens, I might think about just trying this one small thing differently to help you be successful with that. That kind of feedback is really, really valuable and not feedback that we give enough.
I had a coach who would say, he would always say, talk in the positive and the affirmative.
It's good advice. Yeah.
He would always talk to us in that way. And he would always, he would never like directly call anyone out. He would always just kind of, if it was negative, he'd address the team. If it kept becoming an issue, then he'll come to you directly and he'll call you out. Like he was a psychological guy. Like, he was probably my favorite coach because he would tug at people and he'll play the mind games and all this stuff. So he always like say speaking of positive and affirmative. When I was young, I'm like, what are you talking about? You're speaking like another language like that. But now that I'm older and I'm kind of in the similar shoes, like, okay, I did my psychology research, understanding the mindset. It's like, okay, the brain responds better to positivity. And especially as kids, like we're all like kids to an extent, we all respond better to positivity. Like nobody wants to be fussed at and like have negatives thrown in their face. No matter how constructive criticism it is, we all want to have the positive. And so with coaches, we kind of do have this perceptive nature of being the tough guy, especially as being like men. Like we're going to be like, I'm hard nosed dad or, whatever. But how important do you think that emotional intelligence is as a coach? Because I don't feel like that's talked about enough. Like you're the coach, and it's back in my day it was the hard nose, throwing the ball at your face type coaching. So I'm coach you guys like that too, and it's like, okay, but today's kids aren't responding to that. So how important is emotional intelligence for a coach and making sure that they're adapting to that environment too?
I love that you're asking this question. I think it's super important and it's very important, right? Emotional intelligence, like at its core, right? Understanding other people, what motivates them, how they're feeling, what they're thinking. All that does is help you be a better coach, right? If you know your athletes that well, you know how to put them in a position to be successful. You know what to say to them after a tough mistake. You know how to respond to them when something goes well. That's all super valuable. I mean, ultimately, coaching is guiding, it's teaching, it's helping players do what you want them to do within a system that you think is going to win. If you don't understand that who they are, or know them, or care about them, and I think most coaches do care about their athletes, but if you don't kind of get into the emotional side of it and build that personal relationship, you're just never going to see the full picture, right? And the full picture is really what you want if you want to get the most out of your athletes. And certainly you're spot on, right? Things like masculinity kind of get in the way. And, I think the phrases that kill coaches are the way we've always done it and when I was your age, right? Like those two things are never going to get you anywhere because it's not the same age that it was when you were a player. And the
Mm-hmm.
way we've always done it, like that, the whole world innovates, right? If we did it the way we'd always done it, we'd still be driving around with, attached telephones in our car. Cell phones wouldn't exist, right? Like there's a
Yeah.
lot that comes with progress that's really, really positive. And so I think leaning in, regardless of where you are in your coaching journey, right? Leaning into the EQ, the emotional intelligence side of things, I think is really, really important because ultimately you're trying to get the best out of your players, right? And if we can get the best out of our players, then you're going to be in a great position to win, right? And that's ultimately what
Mm-hmm.
it's all about. We all want to be successful, we all want to win, but it's a lot easier to do that with guys who know that you care about them.
So would you say the first step for a coach would be to just basically understand the players and try to get to not know them like personally, but just understand them individually?
I think so. I mean, I think, one of the also common pitfalls of coaching is to coach the team that you want instead of the team that you have. And I think you want to coach the team you have, right? So to do that, you have to know your players individually. You have to know their strengths, their limitations, what they like, what they don't like, what situations they're comfortable in, what situations they're less comfortable in, what they need from their teammates, what they need from you, how they like to be coached, how they receive feedback. Like there's a ton to get into if you're a coach, but all that stuff is going to help you be better. Right. And so it all sounds like fluffy, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of warm and soft and it doesn't seem like just coach basketball, but that is coaching. Like that's what coaching is. It's building the relationship enough, again, that you can get the most out of this guy. And that's what you're really
Mm-hmm.
trying to do. And I think anyone kind of when you step out of sports, it makes a lot of sense, right? So imagine going to work for a boss who never asked you anything about what your work, anything about life outside of work. Like you
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't want to work with that guy very much or that gal very much. You wouldn't feel that connected to them. That certainly wouldn't be a boss that made you stay, right? Or made you work hard. If you got another opportunity to go somewhere else that paid better and was more connected and more fun, you'd be out of there in 2 seconds, right? So why do we
Yeah.
expect players to be any different? We shouldn't. They have the
Mm-hmm.
same needs that the rest of us have. It's just a sport context. And so I think reminding yourself that those things are fundamental human needs, right? People need to be cared about. They need to be connected. They want to feel empowered. Those things go a long way to getting the most out of your athletes. And if you want to win, right, you need them to play as hard as they can in your system for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the way to do that is to get super connected.
Mm-hmm. What is it? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think that's who it was. Yeah. So, like, once you get past the first stage, like, there's not too much a coach can do about that, But the next stage, I think, is like just basically, I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but just conquering those levels of needs that each player has. And so, as a kid, you want to feel included. You want to feel like you're important. So, how can a coach develop those needs of the players and make sure that they feel like this is us and not just a bunch of people, like a random group here with the same uniform on, versus like an army or a team, like a real group that's we're like family building together. Like, what's the difference between a family culture and just a group or a team, just like pick up five at the random rec? Like, how can you build that different culture to where we're not just a random five on the court to being a family and team culture?
I think it starts with spending time with each other on and off the court, right? So it starts with, again, the same stuff we're talking about, getting to know each other, getting to understand individual preferences and tendencies. And then really kind of the way, like, I don't know if you have kids, but I'm sure
No.
people who are listening do have kids, right? Like you kind of parent your kids the same and you kind of parent them differently in that like each kid you have has individual things that you have to think about and individual ways that they respond. They're unique people. And so you have kind of a set of guiding principles that you apply, right? These are your values. This is what it means to be a part of this team. These are the guiding principles, the standards that we're going to hold everyone to. But then you individualize what you do to each individual player and the person that's in front of you because each person has different needs. So what I need from the team, Brian, might be different from what you need from the team. And as a coach, I should be trying to get both of those met as long as it fits. This is how we do things. This is what we believe in here. So the simple way I think about building a culture, kind of the three buckets or three pillars are values, right? Which is like, what do we stand for? What do we want to be known for? Who are we as a team? What's our identity? Standards, which is like, what is the expectation for how we operate? How do we do things here? So we had who are we with values. Now how do we with standards? And then norms is kind of like the daily habits that we implement as a group
Mm,
that drive the way that we behave regularly. And a simple way to think about culture is it kind of falls to the lowest common denominator, right? So whatever you tolerate on a day-to-day basis, that's going to set your culture. And so the way to kind of create that closer culture, that tight-knit culture, is to really make the norms about interacting, about hanging out, about spending time together, about caring about each other, and doing things every day that foster and facilitate that, right? So taking time at the beginning of practice to let guys chat, or checking in with each player individually before
mm,
practice. Hey man, how's your family? What's going on with you? How's school going? Whatever, right? Like these little things that sort of communicate that care. If those become the norms, you'll have that closeness and that connection that you're looking for in your culture. If you show up to practice and immediately you go into warm-ups and no one says anything, like, you can expect to be a bunch of guys wearing, yellow pennies out there running around trying to figure it out together, right? So those would be the three buckets I'd sort of point people to think about.
yeah, you should probably trademark that, man. Alex's 3 buckets of team culture, and
I
just
don't know that I'm sophisticated enough to trademark it, but there's more work to do on it. But I think those are pretty important pieces for sure.
yeah, I think just we can figure this out after we get it done. I just need like
Okay.
2% as a manager fee, and then you can have the rest. That's it.
Okay. Perfect. Done.
Hey, relax. It's okay. Listen, I understand that your goal is so big that it just feels daunting. It just feels overwhelming. Like you trying to get to the NBA, you trying to get to WNBA, you trying to play D1 college ball. I understand. Sometimes that feels like a lot. But listen, you're not gonna make that jump from now tomorrow to be to the league or be in D1. So let's just slow down and focus on the whole journey. Enjoy where you're at right now, but don't get too comfortable. You have to still keep working. You still have to make some type of progress and still keep growing. All you gotta do is think about this. If the minimum I can do today is get 1% better, you winning. Because there are some people gonna take a step backwards. There are some people that's gonna stop and just be equal. But technically you're not gonna be equal because I'm getting better than you, so it means you fell backwards now. And so you gotta get 1% better. Because it's a slow grind from where you're at now to where you want to get to. You don't have to worry about taking over the world in one day. Just take over step by step, one piece at a time, 1% better. It's a whole journey. Okay, you got this goal that's just hanging over you, weighing you down. But this goal, the end destination, it's not gonna change. So you have to appreciate the journey and taking steps to get there. You're a marathon runner, but the whole marathon is about focusing on that next step. So I need you to go ahead and look at whichever one you want. You can get this one of the other ones. But I need you to get this reminder for you. Get you a hoodie, a t-shirt, whichever one, as a reminder that progress is my only goal. And progress don't mean I'm perfect. Progress don't mean I'm there. Progress means I'm getting better. Because better and better adds up to being the best you that you can be. But the best is not existing because you're always going to get better. So get you this peaceful reminder right here to say, hey, all I gotta do is be a little bit better, 1% better, and I'll get to that goal at some point. So remember, it's about the entire journey and not just the end goal. Because progress is the only goal. All right. What did you say? Habits. So lately I've been like nerding out on habits. That sounds weird that I said it out loud, but it makes sense. So like just like knowing how important discipline is, like, and understanding that discipline is really just like a buildup of habits. Like when you get to where you can do good things as second nature, you have to think about it, which is basically my definition of what habits are. You become disciplined at it. So like how can you build those simple, like what are some habits that a player should introduce into their life, and how can they integrate them to where it's like not a big fight. I know some of it will be a fight, but like, what is something they can do to make it, applicable to the life? That's a big question. Use that one so they can apply it to the lives.
Yeah. Well, so there's a great book on this called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Maybe you've read it, but it kind of breaks down a lot of the really good science about habits. But I think the core pieces are start small, right? So come up with something that you want to do and just get started. You don't have to like often people think about like, oh, I want to meditate. So I need to meditate for 20 minutes a day. It's like, no, you can meditate for 2 minutes a day as a starting point, right? So the step one is just start small. Step two is pair it with something that you do regularly, right? So, like, we all do basic things: brush our teeth, take a shower, drink water, watch TV, whatever. Like, there's a lot of list of things that are already actually habits that we have, right?
Mhm.
That we could just simply pair, right? So, hey, every time there's a commercial break, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do 5 jumping jacks, whatever it is, right? Like, if that's a habit you want to build, just pairing the new behavior, the new habit with an existing habit and using that as a cue to engage in the new behavior can help you make that habit a bit stickier, right? So you're not just trying to figure out where in my day do I meditate, but it's like, okay, every time when I wake up, I meditate for 2 minutes. Now all of a sudden you've got a really clear signal when, if this, then that, right? You've
Mhm.
created a rule basically to follow for yourself. And then I think bigger picture, it's thinking about things like who do you want to become, right? Ultimately, like a lot of your habits are symbolic of the kind of person you're developing into. And so you can start to ask yourself things like, what would a person who meditates do right now?
Mhm.
Would they meditate or would they watch more TV? And if you can start to ask yourself those questions and form it as part of your identity, it becomes much easier to make the habits sticky, right? And to make them something that's really a core part of the way that you operate on a day to day basis.
Okay. So I like that because I'm a big fan of like anybody that talks to me about stuff. I try to like reverse engineer. So like you said, like what is your end goal? What do you want to be at? And like let's start rewinding back from there to where we can build towards that. So whether it's this person you want to be, this is the player you want to have, whatever, we're starting with the end goal and we're just gonna like reverse engineer from there. And a piece of that is visualization. So like explain more of that because I listened to Huberman's podcast about that, and he just kind of like messed me up with that. I didn't finish the whole thing, but he kind of messed me up with visualization. So, um, can you explain visualization to a better extent and help me with this because he kind of messed me up a little bit. So, maybe
How
I got to
did
finish the podcast too, but we'll see.
how did he mess you up?
So first, the nugget that he had, it was like, you know how they always say the brain can't tell the difference between what's real and what's fake. So that was like the popular thing, and I was like, man, that's not true. Okay, like so now I have to like really do my own research now, like really figure it out. Um, but that's the biggest thing that just kind of like, okay, maybe my whole life is a lie now. Like it's just
Man, that's an extreme leap to take, buddy. Um, yeah, I mean, I think he's right. And so I think why that's important is actually kind of the same way like people have taken growth mindset and made it like the single most important thing anyone can have. People kind of started to latch on to this idea of visualization. Oh, it's the same. You just do the visualization and now that's your workout. And what's hard is we
mm,
have a lot of data that shows that there's some similarities, right? So there was a really cool study done where they asked people to imagine doing bicep curls and their biceps actually grew and they got stronger from simply imagining doing it. But it wasn't the same as if you actually went and did the curls. And I think that's the
hmm
differentiator, right? So people assume, oh, I can just close my eyes and imagine doing bicep curls and that'll be good enough. And it's like, well, it will be enough for some things, but it won't be the same as doing the thing. And I think that's an important distinction. So the way I think about visualization is it's kind of like mental practice, right? The idea is just to give yourself mental reps doing a specific thing, essentially with the idea being that the more that you do it, the better your mental model will be of that specific behavior or activity or performance that you're doing, right? So the better your mental model, the better your brain can perform under those conditions. But it's never going to be the same as doing it. There's
hmm
no amount of like imagining shooting a free throw you can do that'll give you the same practice as going out there and shooting 10 free throws. But that doesn't mean that it's not useful, right? And I think
hmm
that's the distinguishing part is just because it's not the same benefit doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, right? Sometimes when you're sitting on a plane at 1 a.m. and you've got 30 minutes to kill because you're waiting to get off, that might be an okay time to do some visualization, right? Or if you're pregame and you can't go out there yet because your teammates are shooting on the basket, might be a good time to do some visualization and get some mental warm up going. Like there's a lot of stuff that you can use it for. Just don't get it mistaken for the fact that it's the same, and I think as long as you have that understanding, you'll be all right.
Okay. So what is like the visualization process? So like we're just sitting here visualizing free throws or like whatever you want to. So like what would your suggestion be for how to go through the visualization process?
Yeah, so at a high level, basic, simple way of thinking about it, I'd spend 30 seconds or so kind of relaxing, right? Just getting yourself into the here and now. So you might do some deep breathing, you might do some like a quick meditation, just something that allows you to be a little bit more present, right? It's kind of hard to go from like transitioning out of a classroom and onto the basketball court, and now you're just sitting there visualizing, right? Like you need to kind of get your mind warmed up the same way you get your body warmed up, right? You don't just like go out there and start running around and shooting. Like you stretch, you do a lightweight stuff. So the breathing or meditation is sort of a lightweight warm up, right? And then what I'd say is it's as simple as kind of closing your eyes and trying to picture yourself as vividly as possible executing the specific skill, right? So if it's a free throw, you might want to imagine standing on the line, right? You might want to start by just imagining an empty gym so you're not dealing with distractions from the crowd or anything like that, right? And then actually seeing yourself go through your free throw routine from placing your feet to bouncing the ball to positioning your arms to taking the shot, right? And then ideally seeing it go in, and just doing that 2 or 3 times and then giving yourself a break, right? And then coming back to it again a bit later. That's kind of how I would think about doing it. Obviously, there's, nuance and detail. You can go into all of that. But I think at a simple level, it's relax, pick the skill that you want to imagine, close your eyes, see yourself doing it successfully 2 or 3 times, and go on with your day.
He also said something about you don't want to do it for too long. I think he said like a couple minutes, like maybe 5 minutes, I think he said. So what would be like the time frame that a player should, visualize for?
I think 5 minutes is good. I mean, look, you have different use cases for visualization too, right? So if you're doing visualization to relax, it can be helpful if you can really vividly picture yourself at a beach. It might be helpful to do 10 minutes of just relaxing at a beach in your mind, right? But if you're trying to rehearse a skill or build a skill, 5 minutes is probably plenty. There's no like magic number here, right? But it's hard to stay focused for much longer than that and kind of repeat the same thing over and over in your mind. And so kind of like regular practice, right? We're looking for quality, not quantity. And so if you can do 10 quality mental reps over the course of 5 minutes, 3 times a day, it's pretty good. It's probably enough. It's much better than doing 100 reps in 100 minutes that are all low quality, right? And so that's how I would think about it. There's no magic formula here for the right answer of how much you should do. I think it's really about being able to, again, see yourself do it well, build the model, be really vivid and intentional and high quality. And that'll get you much, much farther than the volume will.
Okay. So what is another habit that a player could use? We kind of touched on visualization. We touched on meditation a tiny bit, but like what's something else that a player needs to add into the game? Like okay, let me ask you this. What is the thing that you see that is a popular thing on social media that you just like, really, guys, like, come on, like this is trash right here, or it's just like misinterpreted? Like what's something that you see that's just like I guess on your nerves type thing?
So man, you asked like 3 questions in there. So can I answer all of them?
If you can, yeah.
Yeah, I think I can. So the first thing, just to close the loop, like I'd say meditation would be the next skill I'd think about building. Basic mindfulness, 1 or 2 minutes, focus on the breath, focus on one single point. It's a really valuable skill. So it's kind of the foundational thing that I think it goes into mental performance because it's good for everything, right? It helps you be present. It helps you let go. It helps you process difficult emotions. It's just like, it's pretty valuable. And breath work kind of as an adjunct is also useful. So those would be the other 2 skills I think about starting with. Then what I see on social media that is misunderstood or drives me crazy. There's two of these, so you're gonna get me on my soapbox here, but it's gonna be worth it. The first is self affirmations, right? So you hear or see people like, just love yourself, just write on the mirror every day how amazing you are, just tell yourself how great you are, and it's like, no. Like,
Mm-hmm.
one, we know that this doesn't work. Like, there's tons of science that suggests self affirmations do not actually help you feel better about yourself, and in fact can draw attention to the discrepancy between what you're telling yourself and how you actually feel, right? So sometimes it can make you feel worse. So if you show up and you're like, you're the best person ever, you're so smart, you're so amazing, but like, I don't know, you kicked a puppy on your walk to work yesterday, right? Like, it's going to be really hard to reconcile the fact that you kicked a puppy and you're also telling yourself you're a good person. And that gap is going to be distressing, right? And so I think self-affirmations have been given like a little pedestal to stand on, and just love yourself and tell yourself you're amazing. That's like, actually would be better to be honest with yourself. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
honesty hurts, but being honest with yourself is going to get you closer to performing well faster than telling yourself that you're amazing well. We're not looking for being delusional. We're looking for being accurate. And so self-affirmations are a big no-no for me. The second one is growth mindset. And that's not to say I don't like growth mindset. It's just to
Mm-hmm.
say that it's really been overextended, right? So people have turned it into, oh, just learn from failure. It's okay. Just work hard. It's all going to be fine. And it's like, that's not true. Like, it's not all going to be fine if you work hard. Working hard is going to help,
Mm-hmm.
but you're going to need some other things. You're going to need some talent. You're going to need some luck. You're going to need some good timing. You're going to need
Mm-hmm.
help. You're going to need other people, right? And then similarly, you're not always going to learn from failure. Sometimes you're going to fail and you're not going to learn anything. And so it's not always an okay outcome to fail. You know, sometimes you can't fail. I don't want my doctor in open heart surgery sitting here thinking, well, gee, you know what? If I fail on this one, it's okay. You know, I'll learn something from this, right? And so
Yeah.
that kind of like idea that this is just a way to live life is wrong. It's just wrong. And it's not bad. It's just actually incorrect, right? There are some times when failure is not a learning opportunity. And I think we have to just be a bit more nuanced in the
Mm-hmm.
way that we come to think about how we use these skills, what it actually means, what the science says is true, and not overextend it into these other ideas about how to live our best life.
That's funny because a couple years ago I read a book. I can't say the title of it, but because this is a family friendly show here, but it's the subtle art of
Yeah.
not caring. You know what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
um,
Mark Manson's book. Yeah.
I got to get more of his books because I like his style. But within it, he talked about how basically what you're saying, how affirmations are kind of fluffy stuff, and it's like you're basically just trying to lie to yourself, and it's like I think the analogy he gave was like no pretty girl walks around telling herself that she's pretty. She just is. And so by you trying to make these affirmations and like you said, write stuff on a mirror on the wall, whatever, you're trying to lie to yourself. And the brain has this filter that's like you're lying. So whatever you're trying to get through this filter of your lies, it's like whatever, and it's just trash. So how can we use affirmations to where we're not lying to ourselves and make it to where it's actually a functional tool to our mental health and mental performance?
Build evidence. I mean, that's the simple answer here, right? Like, make it so you're not lying to yourself, right? If you want to be a good person, do things a good person does, right? Whatever that means to you. If you want to be more confident, practice, right? Practice the skill so that you've got evidence that you can do the thing. That's the
Mhm.
best source of confidence you're going to get. It's not going to, it can come from psyching yourself up, right? But that's sort of like fleeting. But part of why practice is so useful is it helps you believe that you can do it because you've done it before. And so I think that's the way to make those affirmations positive is to literally stack evidence that suggests this affirmation is accurate, right? What I think about myself is true, not because I just thought this, but because I actually have proof. I've done it. And
Mhm.
that's how I would think about making affirmations a bit more valuable and sticky. Um, but I'm sure there are other ways to do it too.
Yeah. with a growth mindset. So that's kind of a tough one, man, because I was thinking about that. It's like how can a player or anybody in general change their brain from a lack mindset to an abundance, or like you said, or a growth mindset, from not being so negative to being more positive. Like you said, like it's not just learning from failures, and like you said, it's like not nuanced answers. So like, what can we actually do to where we're in lack or we're in this negative mindset to where we're crossing that bridge and taking a journey over here to abundance and growth? So like, what is the connection there to make it more applicable?
Well, what the data suggests helps with this is kind of three things, two or three things. The first is a gratitude journal, right? So actively, deliberately making note of things that you're thankful for every day is a pretty good way to stack evidence that things are good, right? And that over time helps you see the world a bit more positively. The second thing is to do what psychologists call savoring, right? So this is the idea of enjoying the small moments, really soaking it in. Sometimes it feels like being in awe, like when you see a pretty sunset or someone do something spectacular, like just being fully absorbed in that experience can be really, really useful. So those would be kind of two places I would start. And then I think third would be to like kind of connect with people around you, right? To express that gratitude to other people. So not I'm only grateful for the roof over my head and the food on my plate, but hey, I'm really thankful to you, Brian, for what you've done for me, and here's how you've helped me, and this is what you mean to me. Those kinds of ways of communicating allow us to see the world a bit more brightly, which I think is really important. And then I think finally I'd layer in a couple of things like hope, right? So looking forward to stuff in the future, thinking about what's good that's coming next is really important. And then I think figuring out kind of like what it means for you personally to live a life of abundance, right? So starting to like
Mm,
really dig into the assumptions that you make, right? So like classic ones are assuming that it's a zero sum game, right? There's like the world has one pie and we're all just got to get our piece of the pie, and whatever I get you can't get. And it's like
mm,
that's not really how the world works. But why do I assume that? What's driving that? What fear is causing that? So kind of unpacking some of that can work on the other side of that, getting rid of that lacking mindset.
mm. That was a big thing for me, because I was talking to somebody one day and it was like I was basically telling them like I got to figure out how I can do this or this because money or whatever. And they was like, I get where you're coming from, understand, but just replace or with and. I was like, figure out how you can do this and this. And I was like, you know what, you're a pretty smart guy. That that just changed my whole perspective.
Yeah,
It's,
that's a good one.
yeah, that was a funny one for me because it's so simple to where that small perspective shift just like changed everything. And I hate to say it, but like society, programs us to think it's either A or B. It has to be Jordan or LeBron. And it's like, why can't we have a collective of things? Why can't we have more? Why can't we just have abundance or growth mindset? So uh, I'm gonna get your thoughts on this. I never told anybody this. So, just keep it between you and me. Um, they say yin and yang, correct? Am I correct in that?
Yep.
So we need the good and the bad. We need both. So how can we get to where we understanding of both? So like it's never yin or yang. I've never heard that in my life. So where did that come from to where never mind, let's not go that deep. Let's not go that deep. I had to catch myself because I try not to nerd out too much, but
I love it.
yeah, maybe part two. We have to come back and do part two, and we
Let's
can get
do it,
deeper.
man.
So, so it's not that you're mentally weak. It's just that you don't really understand where your mental toughness is. You don't understand where exactly you're mentally strong at. It's even crazy. You probably don't even really understand what mental toughness actually is. And I don't blame you because usually we just have coaches yelling at us and fussing at us saying, hey, 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 be mentally tough. You're being weak right now. You're being soft right now. But it's not the full scope, and it doesn't give you any true understanding of what mental toughness is and how you can get better at it. And so I'm here to help you guys out. Because just imagine I gave you a pill right here in my hand. Just imagine. And within that pill, it gave you just a epiphany where you just brain just blew up and you're just like, oh my goodness, you got so much better understanding. Now your game just grows by 10x, and you just a whole different person now. Bro, I got the pill for you right here. Never fear. B's Mental Toughness Playbook ebook is here. You feel me? So in this whole little playbook I got for you, just small little ebook, it breaks down the mental game of understanding what mental toughness is and different areas of what your mental toughness is and how you can actually grow it and get better and enhance it. So, look in the link, look in the description, and to go ahead and purchase it and do yourself a favor by just understanding what mental toughness actually is and also understanding how you can actually grow it and what you need to get better at it. So, just the mental toughness playbook, small little ebook. I'm just trying to tell you, hey, can't say I didn't warn you. How can we get to the yin and yang mindset to where we see both and we see abundance? Because I know perspective plays a big role in that. So what can we do to like change the perspective deeper? Because I know you said gratitude and everything, but some people say, well, I try to be thankful and bad things keep happening, or I try to be nice to people and stuff keeps happening. So like basically they're being stubborn on it. So like what does that stubborn person need to do to where change your perspective from that to this?
I wish I had the answer for how to do this exactly. And I apologize. You probably hear my daughter crying in the back.
Hey,
uh,
you're good, man. We're good.
she's getting ready to eat dinner, and she's like, "What's going on over here?" But yeah, I think it's in some ways the perspective exists in the question, right? Which is recognizing that it's hard to things wouldn't feel bad if we didn't know what good felt like, and things wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
feel good if we didn't know what bad felt like. If that makes sense, I think that's kind of like the origin of the whole yin and yang concept, right? Is light
Mm-hmm.
within the dark and dark within the light. Um, and so I think there's just an element of seeing those things as a little bit more interconnected
Mm-hmm.
that I think can be useful. But I think it's also important to just recognize, like, if you wait long enough, things will change, right? Like, there's always, if you extend the horizon, whatever it is that feels really good or really bad, it's just going to be a blip on the radar. I mean, I remember when I was working with college students more, like you get, and maybe you had this experience too. I know I did. Like, I'd go to a test in college and I'd fail or I'd get a C or a D. And I'd be like, my whole world is coming to an end. Like, I'm never going to get into grad school. I'm just a total failure. Like, this is just bad. I'm not going to amount to anything, right? I told myself this whole story about what it means or meant to get a C, D, or F. And
Mm-hmm.
then in my adult life, zero people have ever asked me about a single test grade I've ever gotten ever on anything, But in that moment, it felt terrible. And so just
Mm-hmm.
kind of zooming out, right, and putting it into that larger, wider lens of, look, like this is not whatever you're experiencing right now is temporary, right? Both good
Mm-hmm.
and bad. And I think if you can lean into that, then it makes it a little easier to deal with the ups and downs of life, which are just natural, right? There's normal parts of being a person. We all have good things that happen, and we all have kind of crappy things that we have to deal with.
Mm. Yeah, I remember someone saying like think about life as the seasons. You can't enjoy winter as much without the summer. You can't enjoy fall as much without the spring. And no matter what season you're in, it's going to have a time where it ends and a new season begins. So the more you're able to just accept it and just roll with it, because no matter how hard you try, December is going to come, and with December comes that winter time, and it's the cold. Especially with you being in Toronto, you. I'm sorry, man. I don't know how you do it, but
You get used to it after a while.
I'm from Alabama, man. Like I don't know. I
I'm
just
from Arizona, so I hear you.
never mind. You might be right, but but nah, it's just embracing the seasons and whatever life has. Cause I'm already a pretty nonchalant guy, but the more I understood I can't control a lot of things, the more like accepting I became of things. So like I can't be rocked too much, and it's like it just happens. Maybe it's the bad thing sometimes, and I should be more bothered by things. But overall, it's just like it is what it is, and I just kind of go with the groove of it. So
Yeah.
um, I think that's a fun but kind of dangerous mind space to be in because it's flatline almost. I do have an aggressive side, I do have downs, but it's never like too heavy to where I'm just like drastically all over the place, man. So I don't know. Maybe I need to come and talk to you one day and you just help me out.
We're all figuring it out, right? Like the whole goal is just for all of us to get a little better, a little righter in our own life every day. So there's not like a right or wrong to any of this stuff to me. To me, it's all about what do you need, what helps you feel good, perform well, be the best version of yourself. Um, so I'm here for you anytime, man.
I appreciate that, man. But zooming back to your level, more the pro guys. It's two things I thought about while we were talking. Um, so when you're going through your journey of a player, like you're helping them with whatever issue you see come to mind. So how do you script out their plans? Like as a trainer, I have an end goal for, let's say, strength and conditioning. That's a little bit easier to process. So you want a player to gain 20 pounds, right? He needs to put on some weight and needs to do mobility, whatever the goal is. So what does that look like for you to where we're journaling through, or we're taking this journey from this player from off season, which is now for you guys, to whatever? Like, what does that process look like to get them from A to quote unquote Z?
Well, there's not like one set formula, right? I mean, everyone's path, like for gaining 20 pounds, even looks a bit different, right? Some guys need more food, some guys need more protein, some guys need more heavy lift, so it's like kind of the same, right? Everyone's got different goals and different things they want to work on. So the first step is to figure out where are you now and where do you want to be, right? And then try to figure out how long will it realistically take to get there and make an educated guess, right? So if I know your goal is to improve your 3-point shooting and you're not confident when you shoot the three right now, I know we've got to figure out how to build confidence when we're out there. And so then I can start to reverse engineer, kind of like what you talked about earlier, right? Okay, this is where we're headed. Here are, I think, the steps that go in to getting to that outcome. Here are the skills that get us to those steps. Let's start training those skills and let's pick one. And I think what's a little different than strength and conditioning here, though, is I'm a big believer in kind of test and try before you buy. So, like, kind of like strength and conditioning in the sense that, like, I might put on 20 pounds by lifting twice a week, really heavy, right? Power lifting. You might put on 20 pounds lifting 4 times a week for 8 to 10 reps, let's say, right? And the goal is just to figure out which one of those things. So for on the mental side, like some guys, maybe they want to do meditation. Maybe they don't want to do meditation at all. Like there's a lot of tools and tricks to get to that point that you're working on. And so you've got to figure out, well, let's start with this one. Let's test it out. Let's see how you feel. If you feel good, let's iterate. Let's keep going. If it doesn't feel good or it's not working, let's pivot. Let's try something new. And so you plan, kind of build the plane as you fly it a little bit, but you've got a sense of where you're headed. And so that kind of North Star, that main goal, keeps you grounded in what you're working on, but you're trying different tactics along the way.
Mm. So what is the starting point look like? Do you just kind of like so like you said, the direction you want to go down to, and at this point you have an idea of where the starting block could be. So how do you subscribe or prescribe a certain thing to a specific player? So actually, take me through a play. You don't have to name names. I know you can't. Take me through a specific situation with the player, as vague a detail as you need to be to where it still makes sense.
Well, so I think like an easy example is to think about a player who wants to perform better under pressure, right?
Mm.
So you know where you want to get. So then it's understanding, well, how do you perform under pressure now? Well, under pressure, maybe I get nervous. Maybe I lose focus. Maybe I'm easily distracted. Maybe I don't want the ball in my hands at the end of the game, right? These are all kind of possible things. Then it's unpacking, okay, well, tell me more about that, right? What are the fears around making mistakes under pressure? What are your current strengths when you're performing under pressure? What are you most worried about under pressure? And really trying to paint a clear picture of how are we operating right now under those circumstances. And then trying to define what would it mean to actually perform better under pressure? Well, it would mean I make better decisions, or it would mean I'm comfortable taking the last shot of the game, or it would mean I stay more focused in the last 2 minutes, right? Lots of possibilities what perform under pressure means. And so you're trying to kind of really clearly map out what's happening now and what would be different where you want to go. And then you start to think about what skill will get me from here to there. And it's in some ways it's that simple, right? And in other ways, figuring out what skill that is hard. So you use science to make an educated guess, right? So say it's someone who I get really distracted. under pressure. Okay, well, that's a good distraction, is usually a good indicator for something like mindfulness meditation, right? Mindfulness
Hmm.
helps us focus, it helps us stay present. So that might be the first thing we try. Hey, let's build up this regular mindfulness practice, because that's going to help you learn to stay more focused. If you're more focused, you'll perform better under pressure, right? And we try that out. And suppose that works, great. Now let's layer on the next skill. What happens if you get distracted, even with mindfulness practice? What can you do to refocus? Oh, I can use this word to help me come back to the moment. I can tap
Hmm.
my pant leg. I can push my feet into the ground. Lots of solutions, right? No one right or no one wrong, but let's come up with something we can do if we get distracted. Okay, now we've got a plan to stay more focused and a plan to deal with distractions. Okay, now how do we get ourselves so that we feel energized under pressure? Well, that might be things like changing the way we think about stress or pressure, right? So instead of seeing this as a threat, oh my goodness, like this is a big moment, we see it as an opportunity. Here's my chance to demonstrate a
Hmm.
skill, to show something new, right? These are little things you can do that will all sort of scaffold to that goal of performing better under pressure.
Hmm. How do you feel about the turning nervousness to excitement idea? Are you a fan of that or no?
There's a lot of science that suggests it works, so I am a fan.
Hmm. I've kind of heard how that's not as true as we've made it seem. I don't do the research, so I'm just kind of I have ideas of stuff, so don't listen to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of it is about how you choose to think about it, right? So I don't
Hmm.
think it's effective to just always tell yourself every time you're nervous, like, oh, I'm excited right now. But I think what's more helpful is to, when you're feeling a rush of energy, right, is to recognize what that is. So when people feel nervous, typically what that is just your brain and body preparing you to do something hard, right? Now you can choose to view that hard thing as an obstacle, as a problem, as a real threat to your existence, right? Like, oh my gosh, if I fail at this, I'm going to completely melt down. I'll never be successful. Or you can choose to view it as an opportunity. Hey, I have a real challenge in front of me. Let me show these people all I've been working on in the gym. Let me
Hmm.
show these people how good my handle is. Let me show these people I can take a big shot under pressure. Right? Those simple, subtle shifts in this is a threat or this is an opportunity or a challenge. That's where I think the magic is in turning nervousness to excitement. It's not just telling yourself I'm excited now. It's kind of the same thing as affirmations, right? So that's how I think about that sort of challenge is it's about finding the opportunity in those big moments to perform well.
Hmm. Self awareness is in perspective. I think is that might be the title of it. It's not gonna be the title. I need a better title than that. Need something. Help me come up with a title for this. 'Cause this is pretty good.
Man, thanks, man. I don't know. Call it something about performance, right? Peak performance, high performance, performance mindset, whatever you want to call it.
Mm. I'll think about it. You know, I got a little bit of time, but
There you
man,
go.
this has been really good, man. I think I can't say that, but I think I enjoy talking to you so much because I know you know like level 10 stuff, but you make it so simple and so practical. And I'm
Thanks.
a huge fan of people like that because I desire to be like that. I want to be like a guru, genius, monk type guy when it comes to training and the mental game and stuff, but make it seem like I'm the average man and just like, oh, all you gotta do is A, B, and C. And it's like, oh, he's a genius. So simple. But that's what you are in my mind right now. Like, I
That's
like this.
very kind of you. I wish I had that level of self confidence too, but I appreciate the kind words. I just do my best to make this stuff as accessible as I can.
I mean, but that's kind of what your job is, though, you know, to an extent, because if you weren't able to break it down and make it make sense, I don't think you have a job in this field. So,
I don't think so either.
nah, man, this has been fun. I know you have daddy duty, got
Yeah.
your baby crying. So let's get you out of here. But any closing words, anything you want to share with the people?
Well, first, thanks so much for having me. And I was serious. I'll come back and do part time with you anytime, and we can line it up where I don't have dad duty, so we can wax poetic for even longer because this was fun. Um, I think what I'd say in closing is just to take care of your mind. Right? We all have been kind of conditioned to take care of our bodies. Right? Exercise, eat right, sleep well, hydrate, but your mind kind of drives the whole machine. Right? So take good care of yourself, train your mind the way you train your body, you'll be on the right path to peak performance.
Mm. You just made me think of another question I wanted to ask you, but it's okay. We're gonna get out of here on that note. But I'll save it for part two, man. But
There we go.
uh, this has been really fun, man. This is I really enjoyed this conversation. Like
Me too.
I could probably talk to you for a good 3 hours and just consume
Next
all
time
this
we'll do
stuff.
a 3-hour episode.
All right, I'll figure out a way to do that. I don't mind doing it, but just they don't want to listen to that. I'm not trying to be Joe Rogan and and Huberman. Like they have some long episodes, man,
They
and I
do.
don't want to turn to them or be a
I
Marvel
got.
movie type guy. Like,
We can cut it into 3 different ones then.
got you. We can do that. So we'll figure out a way to make it work, man. But this has been fun. Hopefully, the listeners have enjoyed and the viewers have enjoyed this too. And if you have, I need you guys to go ahead and subscribe. Like the YouTube watchers, just the button is right there. I don't get why you can watch this and not see the button like right there, like wherever it is, like it's right there. So just press it for me because I got you PhD level education on this platform and you paid nothing. Like I don't get how you just can't subscribe and press a like button. It's very simple, but maybe you can understand because you have the higher education than me. I don't understand. You know, maybe you can understand why you don't do that. But I don't know.
Just push the button, man. Just push the button.
See, I got a man with a PhD telling you what to do, and hopefully you listen to him. You don't listen to me. So, people. Anyway, I love doing this part so much. I don't know why. It's silly. So anyway, you can follow me on all social media at BeBall Jones. That's BE Ball Jones. It's not BeBall. It's like BE Ball Jones. I put that in there intentionally so you guys know it's me and not just like regular basketball. So follow me on all social medias at BeBall Jones. BE Ball Jones. And follow our guests on Twitter. Man, this is a PhD level education right here, man. Like this is some dope game, and you gotta like help them out, give them some love. Go to the Raptors game, support the team, and well, get a passport, and then go to Toronto and support the team there. But when it comes to your city or nearby, support them there too, because you know that's what you should do. Help them out. And just say, hey man, I saw you on the BeBall Jones podcast. You did a great, job on there, and I'll feel weird because I don't think that's ever happened. So that'll be dope for me too. But just tell them like, yo, I saw you on the I saw you on the podcast and that was fun, man. And you should come back and do like a part 3, 4, 5 and just, we'll see what he says after that. But yeah, that's it, man. Follow him on Twitter and also on LinkedIn. This is the first, guys. This is the first LinkedIn reference we've had on here. This is like it's legendary and pretty groundbreaking, guys. I've never heard of LinkedIn. So follow him on LinkedIn and show him some love there. But this has been fun. He has to go be a dad and not be a mental performance coach right now. So you can take that hat off and switch over there, man. And it's really been fun, man. Anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
No, thank you so much for the opportunity. Appreciate it. Look forward to part 2.
I appreciate you coming on. It really means a lot. So but that's it. See you guys next week with another episode. Appreciate you, Alex.
Appreciate you, Brian.
All right, man. Well, have a good one. Get out of here.
See you.